was a former strength coach at the University of Iowa. He was accused of making racist remarks.
This were numerous former Iowa players who spoke out about Chris Doyle, that black and white players were held to a different standard.
You vetted Doyle and you know about his background and you still hired him. How tone deaf do you have to be to hire a guy in this time in the country, in this league, of the things that we've been dealing with? How, who gets that talent?
That's a good point from our Marcus Spears. We're going to dig into a story that really does boggle the mind as we hit Friday on Keyshawn, J. Will, and Zubin, presented by Progressive Insurance. All of our guests on the Goodyear Hotline. So here's the headline. We're going to start with something sweet. It is Valentine's Day weekend, but what the fellas were just talking about there, from Freddie Coleman to Marcus Spears and others, was how do two guys that have never once, ever been on an NFL sideline dominating the NFL discussion like nobody else, never coached in an NFL game, Urban Meyer, Chris Doyle. If you don't know the latter, we'll get into it in just a second, but it is the biggest story in the biggest sport in this country. But before we go in, and we're going to go hard, because we were talking about this yesterday, so brace yourself. It's going to be a good conversation. We're getting ready for Valentine's weekend, and Keys to Love are on the way.
Yeah, they will be on the way. We'll give some love advice and see how I change my voice there. It'll be fun. Callers can call in and tweet questions at us, and do all the Instagram and all the social media stuff. And me and Jay will try to give, and you as well, Zubin, will try to give some love advice. You know, whether it's taking them out, where do you take them to dinner? What do you buy? Do you buy anything? And it doesn't have to be, you can be tangled in an entanglement, so to speak, Jay.
Tangled in an entanglement.
Tangled in an entanglement. And then we can maybe be able to help you get out of that entanglement. So don't be shy.
As long as you use the 90s R&B voice for every segment, that's all I care about. Stay in character.
We certainly will have some R&B playing in the background. Don't
worry.
That's coming up
after dark.
That's coming up in 43 minutes. So, Brian McKnight, if you're listening, get on the horn. 888-SAY-ESPN.
You love Big McKnight.
Like a dream come true. Okay, next, here we go. Let's go.
We can't start back at 1, though. We can start back with Chris Doyle. See?
I surprised you. B. McKnight is right, though. He used to be right, though.
Babyface, 90s.
Babyface, all in.
Yeah,
again, surprising you, probably.
Oh, man, all that. Man, don't
let
give
me find out,
you
Zubin.
Give me chills, Zubin.
Let me find out you got candles in the crib, Zubin. Let me find out.
I don't need to. I can dispense advice. I don't need it. That's all. so at about 43 minutes from now, we'll get into the keys for love. I'm sure.
To love. Yes.
Keys to love. Yeah. Sorry. Right. Keyshawn's keys to love. So here's the question: did the Jaguars screw it up yesterday? Let's run through this story. Some of you saw this, and that's the nature of what we do here, right? Something hits in the NFL, it's like the tipping point. Everybody's talking about it within 10 seconds. But let's just run through this for those that are not aware of the story, just waking up this morning. Thanks for being with us, as always. Chris Doyle, for 21 years, was the strength and conditioning coach at the University of Iowa, largely seen as one of the best strength and conditioning coaches in the country at a position that is valued extremely highly in college football. He was making about $900,000 a year. However, after an investigation last June that essentially said the Iowa football program had racial bias and disparities in the program going back for over a decade, in which more than 50 players, most of them African American, complained about the treatment that they were getting from Doyle, said that he's got to go. The university gave him a $1.1 million separation agreement. At this current point, he and head coach Kirk Ferentz, the man that hired him, are still facing a lawsuit from 13 former players around the racial discrimination. This is not over. Chris Doyle has done an unbelievable job. There have been 55 players from Iowa that have been drafted into the National Football League in the last 15 years, all under his watch. He was hired, despite all of that, yesterday by Urban Meyer, who you probably know is no stranger to controversy. This is Coach Meyer on how careful they were before making this move.
I vetted him thoroughly along with our general manager and owner. Feel great about the hire, about his expertise at that position. So we vetted him thoroughly, and sports performance is going to be a high priority, as it really in the last probably I don't know, 10 years, really, certainly at Ohio State, that became, if not the most important. You guys know my relationship with Coach Marotti at Ohio State, but this whole from strength, training room, physical therapy, sports psychology, nutrition, that all falls under the sports performance team umbrella. And I wanted to get the best of the best.
And I want to sports psychology.
Yes,
Jeez.
Just to quickly,
Jay, I'm sorry. Jay.
Oh,
Jay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, man. Like literally, as soon as he said that, so weird. I've been around you too long. We've been around each other too long now. When he said sports psychology, first thing I said is sports psychology. So I guess you hired him to use sports psychology on the players. Interesting. As soon as he said that, though, go ahead, Zubin.
Quickly, just to mention, Coach Mickey Mariotti is Urban Meyer's right-hand man. It was for many, many years at Ohio State, just to, again, emphasize how important this position is. I also want to mention that part of the reason this hire was made is that the University of Iowa is a developmental program. As I mentioned, 55 draft picks in 15 years, all under Doyle. There are currently 36 Iowa Hawkeyes in the NFL, and believe it or not, 7 of them are first-round draft picks, including one of the great stories. He just retired. This is how Iowa finds guys. Chad Greenway. Key, do you remember Chad Greenway?
Yes, absolutely.
He played for the Minnesota Vikings. He played 8-man football in South Dakota. Let me say that again, 8-man football. Town was so small you couldn't have 11 guys on each side, so they had 8. When he was done with Chris Doyle in the University of Iowa, he was a first-round draft pick. Iowa is a developmental program. Key, the Jags are 1-15. They have a developmental roster. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong, but he told guys at Iowa, come in as a pile of clay. I'll turn you into an Adonis and we'll send you to the NFL. And what Urban Meyer wants to do is take that developmental tack that he had for 20 years at Iowa and make sure in year 1 in Jacksonville, it's in. I'm not saying it's right. There's a ton of baggage, but that is Meyer's rationale.
Well, he could have all the rationale that he wants. I have a lot of respect for Urban Meyer. I've been knowing Urban Meyer for forever. I mean, he recruited me. So, but I am disappointed in Urban Meyer at this point. When you look, Marcus Spears said it yesterday. He said it again as we played his clip from yesterday on our show. You look at the climate and you look at what we've gone through in this country over the last 4 years. Mm-hmm. All of the just the negative stuff that we've had to deal with. Black, white, purple, green, whatever. We've had to deal with. And now, because you want to win football games, you have now hired someone who was, you can call it whatever you want to, separated from the team, Iowa, the university, settled out, came to an agreement. No, fired. Fired. I'm going to say fired. Even though that wasn't the agreement. But let's be real with each other. They gave him $1.1 million to go away because he was due $800,000, and then he had another 3 months left, so they made it 1.1 over 15 months. So they gave him a settlement to go away. And you look at it, you go, well, why is that? Because whatever the allegations were, they obviously didn't want to stain the program so much that they kind of said, you go away, here's your money. Because when you have 50 players accusing you of something, it isn't all race. He's not calling everybody the N-word. It's just the treatment of players, all of those sort of things that went on at Iowa. You made the decision to go out and hire him because you vetted him. You also vetted Zach Smith, who's your former wide receiver coach at Ohio State and at Florida, because he can recruit very well. Yeah. And it was all about winning football games. And you want to make this hire when you're entering into the NFL and you want people to believe in you and believe in your program. Chris Doyle was dealing with 17, 18, 19-year-old kids in college. Mm-hmm. And when you're dealing with those type of kids in college, you can strike fear in them because they're trying to get to the next level to basically help their families and do things like that. But But I'll finish it on the other side because we got to get to break.
We do, and I want Jay's opinions on this. I know he's hot on it. You guys are two top-level athletes. You understand what strength and conditioning really means, but you also understand how you have to treat people with respect. The last thing I would say before we go to break, I just want to say something about those kids that remain at Iowa. Nobody's talking about them. This is an interesting cultural note, and I just want to mention this. This has very much not been in the discussion. Chris Doyle was replaced on the interim basis by a guy named Raymond Braithwaite. And Raymond Braithwaite is African-American, and that's important. The majority of your players are. Doyle is out, and right now his interim replacement is a much younger African-American guy. It's most important that the players feel comfortable, and when we return, I will tell you a couple of things about the Iowa football program. I covered him for years. I will tell you a couple of things about the Iowa football program you will be stunned to hear. And that's how we start the day. Start the Day is brought to you by Indeed. Visit Indeed.com/credit to hire great people fast. On the way, after all this news, has Urban Meyer already lost the locker room before his first team meeting? Jay's